Tonight, a homeowner charged in the shooting of 16-year-old Ralph Yarl, who mistakenly went to the wrong home. 85-year-old Andrew Lester charged with 1 count of felony assault in the first degree and 1 count of armed criminal action.
As a result of these charges, a warrant was issued for Mr. Lester's arrest.
You said that your grandfather would say or do things, apparently that you did not subscribe to, that caused you to distance yourself from him. Say and do things like what?
That's right. A lot of it was the kind of QAnon level conspiracies about election denying, and then they got really weird with some Fauci dogs. I really didn't know what that meant, but I would push back on some of this stuff, and he couldn't handle being pushed back on. And at a certain point, we kind of lost touch, and I think it was more of his choice than mine.
2 people were shot last night, 2 teenagers, and police right now are still searching for that person who shot them right here at Millennium Park on Washington Street. Both boys are expected to survive. All of this unfolding as police were responding to multiple large crowds of people in the loop who they say were jumping on vehicles in the loop, fighting and engaging in other reckless and disruptive behavior.
Walmart is closing more than 20 stores across 12 states and the District of Columbia this year. But about the closures here, specifically in Chicago, Walmart issued a statement saying, quote, "Our Chicago stores have not been profitable since we opened the first one nearly 17 years ago. These stores lose tens of millions of dollars a year, and their annual losses nearly doubled in just the last 5 years."
Once inside, the mob scene clamoring for the goods. In this angle, you can clearly see this thief snatching condoms. All this happening while the clerk hid in the bathroom.
These are the times that we're living in. We're living in critical times.
You can see Starship sort of spinning out of control, and then we see it blow up. Not injuring anyone on the ground, though. Starship was on its way into Earth's orbit, and this is a critical test so that someday it can launch humans to the moon and back, maybe even Mars.
Welcome to Burn Babylon Burn. This is not a news show. It's an opinion show. We encourage you to do your own research. We do not give financial, legal, medical, or any kind of advice. Now enjoy the show.
Yeah, buddy.
I feel like Wilden. You feel like Wilden?
Dude, let's start smashing, bro. Hulk smash all day. Let's go.
Wilden out. Just getting into it on the streets.
Dude.
Episode 50. I can't believe
it.
I can't believe it. Every time the number impresses me, I just feel like how the hell did I do this almost every single week? There was a time whenever it wasn't every week, but now it's been every single week, and following Clown World this closely while also doing an interview show, while also doing my day job and not making a damn dime off of this.
Yeah, I know the feeling, man. You're making me feel old. You know, I'm at like almost 140 with easy peasy. Yeah. And I guess I'm sitting here thinking, I feel like you put out more episodes than I do, at least lately, but maybe I've been going longer. I don't know.
At this point, I'm getting about 8 a month. And if you include the WTF, that makes it 10. So if I make both of them, you know, there's a few of them that I haven't done, but man, it's weird staying busy. You know, hopefully entertaining people out there.
Every WTF forum we've had that you couldn't make it, you know, there was something missing, man. We missed you.
Oh man. I love it though. It's always great. Always a good group of people. And I don't know if I ran it past you. I ran it to the room and Telegram, but I can help host on weeks that other people can't, and we can make it a weekly thing and just rotate more people in through the cycle, because it's easy enough to just do this.
Yeah, man. I love that. I love that you're willing to do that. The whole idea is I don't want to be like, I don't want it to be an offshoot of Easy Peasy. I want it to just be its own ambiguous kind of thing, as you know. It might have, I might have come up with the idea, but it doesn't need to be locked in to every other week or even whatever, like whoever wants to host a WTF forum is fucking free to do so,
I love it. It's because of its nature as a thing that just nobody owns it. We just, some guys we never even met could make WTF forum number 8. And
it's a bit of it's like, to me, that would warm my heart, man. That would be like seeing like your baby leave the nest, like that would be so cool. And that was the whole idea to begin with. Like, if I someday hear of a bunch of dudes that I have zero connection to hosting their own WTF forum, that would be the coolest shit ever. Like, for real.
Yeah, as long as they're not doing Easy Peasy number 180.
True. Or as long as they're not like anything less than based,
Right. Yeah. We wouldn't want the guy that just did the news announcements with all the lists sitting there doing the Easy Peasy show or doing the WTF forum. The teenagers were jumping on cards.
Yeah. WTF forum hosted by Don Lemon, like, no thanks.
Oh no. Don Lemon is another one who's
no thanks, bro. At that point, I'm just I walk away from the game. I'm done. I'm fucking done,
Yeah, well, what if somebody just like steals all our cred and it's completely, it's like Bausch and a bunch of like terrible people that have none of our opinions.
and they like fully corporatize it and like monetize it and do it like way better, but it turns into state propaganda. It's like the ultimate controlled opposition, right?
Yeah, we turn it on and it's the Young Turks.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Speaking of which, can we talk about that chick on the Young Turks like spazzing out when she's talking about how like,
oh yeah,
the California thing to ban gas cars, and she's like you can tell like they did a good job covering it on No Agenda, because it's like, yeah, her CPU like would not compute, like she went into brain, like her brain got fried.
Well,
she's like,
what was awesome? She said like, the middle class.
Yeah, dude. She dropped some bombs in there, man.
And that's true. That's I'm not exactly middle class. I don't think. I don't think I qualify. We'll see whenever. I guess the tax man has already cometh, but we'll see next year whenever I've got a house and all that. Because I don't have my house on last year's taxes because I just bought it, or signed myself up for a whole bunch of debt for it. But we'll see how that goes. I don't know what even considers middle class anymore. I'm pretty sure I'm still poor.
I think the whole like middle class thing is almost a misnomer at this point. Like, there's relative degrees of poverty.
It's working class.
It's the working class. Yeah, it's the working class. It's people, you might live in a $500,000 house, you might live in a $50,000 house. But if you're relatively comfortable and you have internet access and like a certain degree of comfort, right? Yeah, I think you're out of abject poverty and you're in the quote unquote middle class. And what she said was like, what the middle class are like the most how'd you say it? The most oppressed,
The
or
most
something of
screwed
that-
over, something along
Yeah.
those lines. Yeah,
dude.
and
I almost
she's not wrong.
I thought about it. I thought about it like yesterday. I didn't actually post it, but I'm like, I want to do a poll on my Instagram, and it says like, which group is the most oppressed? You know, like blacks, Jews, or the small business owner. You know?
Well, the results would clearly be anti-Semitic.
Yeah, clearly. That's that's why I didn't post it. But like, to me, there's only one obvious answer to that. It's the small business owner, you know? Like fully.
Well, yeah, and this small business owner is not eligible for reparations. Now, here's something interesting. We thought about talking about this. Pete Quinones just did a really awesome episode on it with Reed Cooley. I highly recommend checking it out. But
and also, well, before I let you get into it, congratulations, man. I listened to your show with Pete. It was awesome. You know, like fucking A, man.
It was really great. It's really cool to talk to one of my heroes like that. I kind of talk to him every single day, but you know, it's but I mean, like as far as being a part of his chat group, but it was awesome. It was just like it was cool standing there in front of one of my heroes in broadcasting.
Well, it made me think, you know, it's like we're expanding the network, right? This like neural network of like-minded folks. And listening to you two talk, I had a funny thought because I was like, man, I really like listening to these two guys talking. And it made me realize, I'm like, some of the episodes of other shows that I listen to, I'm like annoyed half the time because I don't necessarily care for the hosts. Okay. And I'm not trying to talk shit, but it's kind of like some of the biggest names in this kind of community, this, you know, liberty, you know, movement are like, to me, kind of annoying personalities. And I'd so much rather like the Petes and the Andys like rise up above like the Tim Pools and the fucking Steven Crowders and the fucking you know, who's the other guy? Ben Shapiro. Man, I cannot listen to that guy. I can't listen to him. His voice, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. I don't know. Here I am talking shit, dude. But you know what I'm saying.
I have a lot more. I mean, he's always wrong right off the bat. And this is Mud is a big time Shapiro listener, and he never met he never met a war he didn't like. Well, so long as it favors Israel, which you know says that. I mean, he's a neocon. He's just taken it to its logical modern conclusion, and I just don't think that we have space for neocons anymore. It's over. Yeah. It's it died with McCain.
Right.
I mean, it still lives on. There's still Eye Patch McCain, as Alex Stein calls him.
I like that. That's a great nickname. Yeah.
Lindsey Graham talking about going to war with Taiwan. He thinks it's real important. You know, that little Southern Belle doing his nasty thing with, trying to get more missiles launched and everything like that. But guess what? The petrodollar is coming to an end. The United States will not be able to afford all of this war anymore.
Yeah.
That's the upside. The downside is
the check's about to bounce, right?
The downside is hyperinflation, and us dealing with hyperinflation. I see what you got right there. You got a smoke. That is survival currency. I think you should buy as many cigarettes as possible for the future economy.
Max out one of my credit cards, buying cartons of cigarettes. Yeah.
Knick-maxing. Yeah.
Well, hey, when it comes to the rate of inflation and the rising cost of cigarettes, and the rate of interest on the credit card, at some point the lines on those curves cross on the graph, you know, and we're getting close to that point where that 14%, you know, credit card interest ain't nothing compared to the rising cost of cigarettes, you know. I guess we'll see. I wrote about that in my novel where, like, you know, when the grid collapses, the first thing that got looted was all the cigarettes. You know, we saw that video in the
Exactly.
in your opening montage. Like, you know, if you're only listening and you're not watching, the look on this kid's face as he's stealing packs and packs of condoms is pretty telling. He's got a smile a mile wide as he's stealing all these condoms because he knows how valuable they are. You know, it's like, that's
Right.
gold, man. That's rubber gold. That's what that is. Latex gold. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think this is? So, we talked about anarcho tyranny in the last episode of the WTF forum, and so we've got street takeovers where there's a race where it's unsanctioned. A whole bunch of people block the streets, and then people go in the street and do donuts and crazy stuff and race and everything else. Then there's wilding, which is, you know, all right, wiling out, where people just jump and damage people's property, damage public property, etc. This all seems, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's orchestrated. I think it's just something where they recognize that they won't be penalized for it. And that,
I think this is psychology, nothing more.
Yeah.
Nothing more. Yeah. I fully agree. I don't think this is orchestrated or even spurred on. You know, it's like, as opposed to the BLM protests turned riots, where, like, I've expressed on my show and probably at different times on the WTF forum, like, I was very much at the protests during BLM, like, interested as a observer / you know, in many ways sympathizer, right? I'm not a big fan of the police. I, you know, don't believe that anybody deserves to die at the hands of the police unless they are an actual threat to people around them. So, like, the George Floyd protests, like, I had sympathy for in the beginning. And my observation at the beginning of those riots was that it felt to me like something or someone pushed those protests over the edge. You know, here in Indianapolis, I witnessed a white guy with a skateboard. The first windows I see get smashed were a white guy with a skateboard, a guy that looked 30 to 45 years old. And he was smashing windows with a purpose, like somebody had instructed him to do so. Now, my theory was, because from where I was, I could not see the first window, but from what I could hear, the first broken glass sounded like a car window, and I assume it was a cop car. And I think that was a genuine angry rioter protester. And I think as soon as that first broken window occurred, somebody was waiting with instructions. Hey, don't start it, but once it starts, crank it up a notch. And I think that was the pseudo Antifa guy smashing, you know, the windows of the bank and every other place on the block with no care for what window or what business or whatever it was. He was on a mission to break every fucking window. And I remember at the time being flabbergasted, like, that is not normal, even in these circumstances, even in a riotous circumstance. Like, it looked unnatural. There was the natural chaos, the natural anger, and then there was this guy who was a little bit more focused. And I don't see that with the teenagers in Chicago. You know, with them, I see pure and utter chaos, anger, emotion, you know, psychology bubbling over, and these, like you said, just wiling out. And like, again, I can almost sympathize to an extent. One of my favorite events that I go to, it's called Bike Night. And it's where a bunch of Harley riders, bikers, whatever, they shut down a whole block here in Indianapolis. It's actually in Speedway, Indiana, which is kind of a city within the city of Indy. But they shut down a whole block in Speedway, and it's burnouts and stunts and drag races. And it's kind of like no cops allowed, right? It's kind of organized chaos. It's a whiling out, but with a certain degree of like, we have a code of honor here. We have a code of ethics, like have all the fun you want, burn all the rubber you want, but don't be a dickhead. Don't cause any problems. Don't break shit. And so there's a very fine line to me as a guy that loves to while out or whatever, whiling out. I love whiling out. But when people start getting hurt for no good reason, it's gone too fucking far, and that's what you're seeing here with these teenage, the teen takeovers. It's like they're beating the shit out of people. They're beating the shit out of each other for no goddamn reason, like it ain't all
wanton disregard. Yeah.
It's not all in good fun no more,
Yeah, a lot of people think that's what anarchy means. That it's it's just chaos. And the thing is, this is why I think that the certain like the more right wing anarchists need to change, because it's been completely taken by the left wing. And and I think that there is a sentiment for being right wing and anti-government. I mean, there's a well formed box that was made just for guys like us, or at least speaking for myself. I don't know exactly where you fit on that, but I think that
I guess I'd be curious to ask you, man, like, how do you feel about that word anarchy these days?
I less and less all the time. It's something that enchanted me for a moment, and I become more and more disenchanted with it, because it doesn't have any. It doesn't have a positive conclusion, really. If libertarians and anarcho-capitalists achieve Ancapistan, the first thing that's going to happen is the richest companies in the world, which are the same rich companies that just put us under the tyrannical boot of big pharma, are going to buy us slaves, and it'll just be, it's, I would never sell myself into slavery. Well, what happens when you just can't have anything? Everything just gets taken from you, all at once. The whole rug gets pulled out from you, under you. The price of whatever you think is cheap right now. Gas has gone up, gas has gone down a little bit, but if the price of gas was $100 a gallon, you're not driving. And they can do that, and that's really what they're doing. And they're pushing. And then there's the social side of libertarianism that pushes all the things that are naughty, really. I mean, I know I sound corny saying that, but it's it's all the things that are actually detrimental. They let us into a lot of traps: drugs, sex, all these things, and it's like
I think
overindulgent.
The strict adherence to the nap is maybe detrimental in the long run, or at least pretending like the nap is all that matters, right? The non-aggression principle. So what I've kind of come to think lately, and I think we'll have to circle back. We'll have to touch on like some of these specific topics, but this is maybe good like context to lay down, because I think you and I are in similar places, like philosophically, in that like anarchism is a very appealing idea because of the inherent truth of it in my opinion. It is true. It is not complete necessarily, though. It's not a full truth. So like, to me, I almost imagine like anarchy is like the blank canvas, right? Like that is the backdrop. That is the underlying reality of things, that we live in anarchy at the basis. Like the government, the structures around us are sort of illusory, right? They're illusions. They're only as real as we allow them to be. But at the basic level, at the core biological level, we live in anarchy, and we kid ourselves to think otherwise, right? So like, I think these kids in Chicago, in San Francisco, in LA, in New York, you know, this is not an isolated thing to Chicago. Like, I think it's like a biological symptom of too much tyranny, and the natural balance of things in a backdrop of anarchy is that when people live under all these oppressive forces, eventually they lose it. They lose their minds. They lash out chaotically, you know. Like, it's why I like hanging out with bikers, man. It's because, like, for a long time, bikers have found a relatively undestructive means of releasing the pressure, right? Letting out a little bit of anarchy amidst all the tyranny.
Yeah,
right?
it's the outlaw culture. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if there's a way out, of the system's boot, then, you know, let's be freaking elitist and take that way out, and let all the people that really don't deserve liberty anyway not have it. Let them sit under the tyrannical boot. I don't feel like it's the greatest thing to go and advocate for our enemies, because that's what we've been doing all the time. We're trying to protect free speech for people that are, you know,
yeah.
that would just take ours away in a second. And then we're sitting here trying to defend the gun rights of people that will be the first people to shoot at us as soon as everything breaks out. So it's like,
if I can interject, dude, this is another question. Like, leading up to this conversation with you, this question popped in my head. I'm like, if I get the chance, I'm going to ask Ando what he thinks. Who are we talking to at this point? Right? Are we evangelizing? Are we trying to convert? Or are we strictly trying to embolden and like build up the revenant? Or not the revenant, but the remnant.
Yeah.
I guess the revenant as well. Those who have reverence, and those who remain.
Well,
like,
revenant is an undead thing. It's an undead thing that goes on a mission. Like, the best story of a revenant to me is the Crow. You know, he was killed in a terrible way and comes back as basically a zombie, but he's not mindless or anything like that. But he has this mission, his revenge mission, in order to take out the people that did him wrong. But going on, let's so
I simply misspoke. We're talking about the remnant, you know, but yeah. Go on.
I don't know. You know, I've read the Albert J. Nock story of the remnant, and how he basically relates the biblical story, I believe it was Daniel, to libertarianism. I don't think it's it. I think it is. It's somewhere. It's near there, you know, because I'm still motivated by Ron Paul. You know, I still listen to him every single day, and I still think that he's brilliant and he's got the right idea. And
so you think there's still a case for conversion, basically?
No, No, I don't think that we're gonna. I don't think that we're gonna pull the crazies to our side. Like, do you think that you can go to that riot of all those teenagers and be like, hey guys, no, what we really need to do is embrace, you know, the founders and all this other stuff. There's no putting that toothpaste in the tube. You know, it's
Yeah, but you hear about the like the missionaries who go like, you know, go to the gay pride marches and actually like have a breakthrough with somebody and shit like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. You know, I guess it's a big, broad question, but like I struggle sometimes with the tone of my show. Like, who am I really trying to talk to? Am I trying to talk to normies, like NPCs who might yet open their eyes, or am I talking to the people whose eyes are open? And I think sometimes I try to straddle that fence a little too much.
I only want to kind of preach to the choir. I'm not here to debate anyone. I had one show that we tried to start it, but I had a bad connection. And while we were having a bad connection, there was a guy who was heckling my former co-host, and well, he's still my co-host occasionally, but Mud, he's heckling Mud about all this stuff about the election and Trump and all the other nonsense that, you know, whatever. And Mud's sitting here arguing back with him on the stream, and I don't want that. That's not my show. I'm not arguing with leftists. I mean, if I see some leftist that's trying to heckle me in the comments, I'm just gonna mute him or ignore it. There's no point. I'm not gonna fight with them. I
think it keeps the conversation at like a very basic level, maybe to try to like be that appealing,
I'm not good. Okay, they think that I'm something, and I'm fine with them thinking that. Keep thinking what you think about me, and I don't care. I'm gonna think what I think about the commies, and I'm not gonna change my mind. They're gonna keep thinking what they think about me, and they're not gonna change their mind. So, I don't care. I don't care what happens to commies, and I'm not gonna try to protect the commies' free speech. The commies control everything right now, anyway.
I think it's what kind of irritates me about like certain personalities, actually, like Tim Pool in particular comes to mind. Like, I think he over explains himself, and maybe that's just, you know, I listen to most of his shows because I think that he's almost always like hitting the right subject matter, even if I don't agree with his take. Like, he seems to have his thumb on the pulse. I'll give him that. He's very much at the forefront of like the conversation. But what irritates me is he's constantly trying to argue, like, I don't know how to express this exactly, but it's the surface level argument. And I think it's because he's trying to remain broadly appealing, but it's like he never gets beyond like the surface level of the argument. And then I feel like as the listener, I'm hearing him make the same arguments over and over and over. And it's like, yeah, we're there, bro. We're there. We're with you. Let's go to the next thing, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I can think of other examples, but not off the top of my head. But I don't know. So back to the nap, you mentioned that just a little bit ago, and I think one thing is it shows us the constraints. We have the bars of the nap, and that's one of they defanged us from the very get-go. You know, we're the most capable people of a real revolution because we're sitting here working in this founders ideology, and but we're defanged, you know. But the thing is, how aggressive upon are we already? You know, like I mean, we're
that's
super aggressive upon.
That's a fucking fair question, man. Yeah, and like, it's very nice to think. Yeah, do no harm, right? do no harm. Right? Like don't swing until someone else hits you in the cheek. It's like I was listening to somebody talk about like, did your parents teach you to wait until you were hit before you hit back? Like there's kind of a fundamental ethic. I was I think I was taught even worse. It wasn't wait to be hit before you hit back. It was don't hit ever at all, period. Right? Like I was born after the zero tolerance policies were enacted, right? Zero tolerance. If you're in a fight, you're expelled. Doesn't matter if he swung first or if you did, you're expelled. So I was constantly taught, like, no matter what, never, ever. Violence is not the answer, right? Violence is never the answer. Well, guess what? Sometimes it's either fight or die, right? And like, that's nature, man. That's fucking nature. And so, yeah, this question of like, do you let somebody beat on you repeatedly? Or do you fundamentally, or do you punch first, right? When they like, is it an aggression when somebody steps into your personal space with an aggressive kind of body language? At that point, have they violated the nap? Debatable. But the practical question is, once that does happen, once they do step to you for your own sake, is it better to wait for them to strike or for you to strike first? Like that, it's a fundamental question. It is.
Yeah. I'm about 13 years older than you exactly. And I took American karate, and that whole thing, it's awesome. You learn how to fight, but you also learn how to prevent a fight. And it's a really weird psychology thing, because you're basically supposed to let a lot happen before you retaliate. And I think that it causes a lot of hesitation in real life. I've gotten ambush mugged before, things like that. And yeah, it's that was rough, like that was teenagers. And here's the thing about teenagers: their brains are not fully formed. And that's science, bro. But yeah, teenagers are a mess, and they will act out certain ways. And whenever there's a whole gang of them, they're actually really dangerous. And I think that street thing that you just saw there is complete proof of that. Is that they get up in any group of young men together can cause a lot of havoc. But yeah, I end up hesitating, and I don't know when to cross that line and everything like that. And then, of course, you've also got to discipline yourself. If you're a firearms owner, you got to know when to strike. And it sounds like the guy in Kansas City had no idea when to strike, because I'm not sure. There's probably more to the story, but the way that it was reported initially was he just shot him for ringing the doorbell. But then there was another report that he had actually entered the house. But then there's another report said that he shot him through the window. Yeah.
I even heard that it was just that he jiggled the door knob like he was. But this is a fundamentally like important detail. Even just the jiggling of the doorknob. Say I'm a lonely widower living alone at 80 years old, and somebody rings my doorbell at 11 o'clock at night. That might put me on alert too. And I might grab my gun too. And I might stand there and wait. And the moment that they try to actually enter, that might be the moment that I decide to pull the trigger. Like I cannot say, because I was not in that guy's shoes, but the way that it was, again, very interesting the way the media portrayed it, because it was like they wanted it to be painted as a racially motivated shooting. And I think no matter what, that is not what it was. Like, I think it was
his grandson, man. That was messed up.
I hadn't seen that until that was the
first. Oh, you
should
watch the whole thing.
Dude, when you texted me saying the grandson is fucked up, like, I honestly didn't know what you meant or who you were talking about. I hadn't seen that part of it. But yeah, so his grandson is like so ready to rat him out as like a QAnon guy. It's kind of like the leaker of these classified documents immediately getting painted as like a right-wing gun-toting, QAnon motherfucker. Yeah, man, like you're ascribing intent to a guy who was probably just scared and maybe shouldn't have pulled the trigger, but like was in a situation in which he felt threatened, and by the letter of the law, I think ought to be probably acquitted of all charges, because again, it's kind of the question of, did the guy turn the doorknob or not? That really does matter. Ringing the doorbell is one thing, grabbing the doorknob and jiggling it, trying to gain entry, that's a whole nother thing. And I hate to say it, but this kid should have known better than to try to enter a dark home late at night. Whether or not he thought he was at the right house is irrelevant,
Yeah. What was another detail of this is, so Sean King immediately started grifting on this, because that's what Sean King does. And then the media gives out the address that the kid mixed up, because it was a difference between street and terrace. They gave this man's address on the news.
So they doxed this man. They doxed him, man.
The media and Antifa, BLM, whatever the hell you want to call them, are totally on the same team. Mm-hmm. And basically they said, this is the guy's address if you want to go terrorize this guy.
He's the next Zimmerman. He's the next Zimmerman, right? Yeah.
Yep. And so it's super messed up. And this is, and the grandson calling him racist. Now, what if they turn this into a hate crime because of that? Because they didn't really need to. Hate crimes don't exist. First of all, that is something that was made up.
A crime is a crime is a crime. Yeah.
And just to do that to his grandfather is really bitter, and it's all over this divide, because his son is a flaming libtard and his grandfather is a Trump supporter, Fox News watching MAGA guy.
It's like Biden signing into law this bullshit anti-lynching legislation, right? A couple years ago, right? Am I mistaken? But this became federal law, right? As if it wasn't already illegal to lynch people. Are you shitting me? Like, we need a new law in 2021 or 2022, whatever, to say that lynching is now illegal? No, it was already and always was illegal. Thank you very much, But to call it a hate crime, we're slapping, it's all window dressing for the sake of the narrative. Right?
Yeah, I mean, they've included a bunch of politics into this, and it's all about this divide that they've created. And now, I feel like whatever they can get their hands on, whatever they can stir up, they will stir up, and that's just how it goes. And so you've got the takeovers, you've got the wilding, and then you've just got a situation that got out of everybody there's control.
Should we play the clip of the mayor responding to the teen takeover? I think this was pretty good.
Can you do it on your end?
Yeah, I'm sure I can. Hang on just a second. Yeah. Because it's just so like rich, right?
Was it Lightfoot? Or was it the new mayor? The new mayor that's
it's-
also a woke mayor.
Yeah, well, mayor-elect, I should say. He is not yet mayor, but this was his response. Give me just a second. I'm getting there.
When he was an instructor, he never failed a student. I just learned that listening to Our Interesting Times, that this guy is one of those kinds of instructors that would never fail a student. So you just show up to his class and you got a grade regardless.
Go figure. Go figure. Yeah. Hilarious. All right, here we go. Is this showing up?
I got nothing. Yeah, I think I would have to give you certain privileges, but yeah.
Maybe so.
Yeah, and I don't think I can do it right now while we're in the middle of a stream.
Well, but in any event, he basically, the punchline is that he says, you know, we do not condone these crimes or these malicious activities, but at the same time, we should not demonize these the youths. We should not demonize the youths. You know, the narrative says that it's not their fault. You know, they're just underserved. They're underserved. So we cannot hold their crimes against them. You know, I think when we were talking about doing this this episode, it almost feels like the theme of a lot of these different topics is being rewarded for bad behavior, right? Like, yeah, go loot the corner store and steal all the condoms, and there's a 0.0001% chance that there will be any consequences. You know, again, this whole thing about like the nap and like these kids, like, is it acceptable to shoot when they've entered the store? Is it acceptable to shoot before they enter the store? Well, in Chicago, it's not acceptable to shoot ever, period. Even if they're beating the shit out of you. You know, it's like what we covered on the WTF forum, the parking garage attendant in New York City who got shot, wrestled the gun out of the perpetrator's hands, shoots the perp, and then gets charged with attempted murder. And it's like, what the fuck, man? You know, like,
right.
And it's because we have no common code. We have no common sense of morality or honor or, you know, dignity or respect. You know, if you start questioning like property rights, then it becomes very ambiguous. When do I have the right to defend like myself and my property? Well, you don't own anything, especially yourself. You don't even own that. That's the fundamental like ambiguity they're trying to sow, right? You don't own anything, even your own body. We own you, and you have no right to use force ever, period. Violence is never the answer unless you have a badge and, you know, the backing of the government.
Yeah, the old James Bond License to Kill. I was just thinking, thinking about that today. In fact, that, you know, you have to have a license to do anything in England, and
Amen.
But
Amen.
That's funny because I ran into an old roommate, and I wanted to show him a rifle that I just got, and I show him the picture, and his friend there says, "What are you gonna do with that? You're gonna go shoot up this or that?" And like I'm gonna like go pop off, and I'm like, no, dude, I'm gonna...
Insinuating that you could be a mass murderer. Was that the joke?
Basically, just by owning it, and that's the thing, is that, you know, just by owning it, they want to consider you criminal. And now, I just want to shoot paper at the range. I never want to hurt anyone, and I don't ever want to have to use something, and I don't want that circumstance to ever, you know, cross my path. I just want to enjoy it, know how to use it, and enjoy the sport of, you know, going to the range and seeing how many things I can how many bullseyes I can get, to see if I can
But
hit
at the same at the
aim
same time, I don't want to, like, don't be a FUD about it, right? Like, the purpose of the Second Amendment is not for sport. It's for
Right
filling
on.
the fucking blank. It's for filling
Right.
the fucking blank. It's for redcoats, motherfucker. Like, and if you don't know what I mean by redcoats, I'm sorry, you're listening to the wrong fucking show. But like, let's not pretend it's just for fun,
So we're already there, though. I think. I mean, I really feel like we're the time has passed, but I think it happened so subtly that, I mean, we're already kind of in this weird state of okay, well, there was this Declaration of Independence that says not only is it your right, it's your duty, and and there was a time back in the early 1900s where they made that illegal. They didn't want you to see that document, and now they're basically doing it again. Now,
made what are you saying they made illegal in the 1900s?
I believe it was Wilson, everybody's favorite one to hate, but he didn't want people going around spreading the Declaration of Independence around, because that's basically says, hey, whenever the government becomes tyrannical, you gotta,
So you're
stop.
saying that a law was passed against the spreading of the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, fill in the blank.
Yep.
I mean,
Declaration of Independence. Yeah.
Okay.
That happened in the early, I know his terms were in the early 1900s, early 19 teens. So
kind of reminds me of what, it's a little bit of an offshoot, but what you and your aunt, what's your aunt's name again?
Aunt Laura.
Laura. Didn't she say something about how somewhere along the way they made it against the rules to take notes? Or was it the other way around? It used to be against the rules to make notes in a Bible.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it was a thing that was considered really taboo to basically write in a Bible, and this was the first Bible that was published with the notes in the side, written in inside the book on each.
So I
of
guess
the page.
it's almost
since.
It's almost the opposite then, but there's a similarity there, and I guess we'll see if I can explain what I'm thinking here. But it's like it's a different type of censorship in a way. One is editorializing, and the other is restricting, the spread of a document. So one is to take a document, editorialize, make notes, interpret it. The other is banning its, spread to begin with. But both are forms of censorship, I would think. One is saying this is what you should take from these words. Forget what you think for yourself. Here's the editorialization. This is the modern media telling you what to think about the events of the day, versus, we're just not going to tell you anything. But I don't know. Is that a stretch? I feel like there's a point there in that, there's different types of censorship, different types of manipulation. I don't know.
Well, I think we're just long past the point, and more than 100 years past the point. I would say that one of the biggest violations of that Declaration of Independence was, the War of Northern Aggression, as Ryan Dawson calls it, but the Civil War was some of the worst tyranny of all time, and you had Americans attacking Americans, and it seems like something that is being built to right now, the way that they've got us divided. And so, yeah.
What do you think about the response from the White House about NPR being labeled government-controlled media on Twitter?
Oh man, this is a perfect transition. So yeah. This is also the same week that because 420 happened, and that was the day that Elon, because he was being cute, decided to have all the celebritards pay up for their $8 to get their blue check, and their blue checks have gone away. And somebody said that people will literally die and all of this. And
God, people are so dramatic, dude. They're so dramatic.
they are. It's ridiculous, but yeah. And also on 420, Elon decided to launch one of his really expensive rockets, paid
Right.
for with our tax dollars.
Yeah,
but
of course.
in roundabout ways. People think that he's such a great businessman, but he's really such a great hooker to the Defense Department. So
He's real good at spending, defense money, no doubt. Which, hey, I mean, maybe that's kind of base. Like, if he can get the contracts, by all means, burn it, burn all that cash. Bleed the beast, bro. Bleed the beast.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fun to try to get people to wake up from their Elon worship.
Yeah. No.
There's so many. There's only one person to worship, and that is Jesus Christ. That's it.
Yeah.
Drop
Dude,
Elon, drop Trump. Only Christ.
Yeah, the whole hold no false idols thing, man. I think that, and again, this is kind of where my head's been at about like anarchism in general. I'm like, have I been holding anarchism as a false idol?
Yeah,
Like,
that's kind of how I got to these conclusions, because it was really, a really great conversation between Pete Quinones and Matt Erickson 2 summers ago, and it was basically explaining that libertarianism is kind of a religion, and and how what we think we want is not really what we want, and he explained that the best way to get free is to just really to provide yourself with the most amount of success, and that most people just don't want to be free. It's a really great episode. Look it up. It's back in the archives. Maybe summers ago. Yeah.
So one of the most interesting kind of progressions that I've been able to witness has been Buck Johnson. Do you listen to Counterflow?
I love Buck Johnson. He is,
man, he's
really, he's a really great guy too. I met him twice, and he is, he's a really great person to be around.
So what I've found interesting as of late, right? Well, I guess like a little backstory for the listener, if you're not aware of who Buck Johnson is. He started out as the host of the Death to Tyrants podcast, right? Which is pretty aggressive in its inception, right? Death to Tyrants. And he's gone through this progression where he wanted to be less aggressive, less sort of violent rhetoric, found his way into Orthodox Christianity, renamed his show Counterflow. And I'm over summarizing here, but I found it interesting in that just in the last few weeks, he even went so far as to censor his opening song, where there was a single F-bomb. He now has a little like record scratch, just because I found it interesting, because he's been talking about Orthodox Christianity for over a year, right? Like maybe a year and a half. And that opening track remained untouched for a very, very long time. But I think he finally kind of reached a point where he's like, even that's just a hair more aggressive or more violent or more, maybe the better word would be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Degenerate, vulgar, a little too vulgar.
Yeah.
And so he put the little record scratch over the fuck, right? And fuck's one of my favorite words, I have to admit, right? I am not a perfect person. I'm on my own journey. My relationship to God and to Jesus Christ is my own, right? But I find it interesting because his show is still as hard hitting and as poignant as ever, but he's gotten almost completely away from politics and gone more metaphysical, mystical, spiritual. I almost choose not to use the word religious because I think he's particularly unreligious about it. He's very open spirited. He's not
humble is part of his character, but to begin with,
he's very humble. He's not a rigid personality. It's not my way or the highway, but he's trying to lead by example. And I see it. And the subtlety of just cutting that fuck out of his opening song and the timing of it. Like I said, it was not so abrupt. It just happened recently, but I think it's because he's really living out his values authentically. And he was pissed for a really long time. I think he's actively moving beyond his anger, and he might almost be more dangerous as a result. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's let go of the false idol of worshiping the anti-tyranny, right? Worshiping worshiping liberty, right?
It was put really well when he interviewed. It was actually, I think, David Gornowski interviewing him, because he interviewed David Gornowski, and then the next week he was on David Gornowski's show, and he said, "So you went from death to tyrants to death to the world," and
yes,
that was What a solid dude. I'm going to talk to him one of these days. He's going to be on the show. Next time he's probably going to be at Childerberg. I really hope he is. Yeah. I hope that, this orthodoxy change with him and Tommy Salmons doesn't keep them away from an event like Childerberg, because I want to see those guys in person again and go, "Yo, dudes, talk to me."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a big following, but I feel like I'm putting out a decent enough product.
Well, I had a similar thought, right? Like, Buck Johnson was at Childerberg last year. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I talked to a number of anarcho-Christians, though, like self-proclaimed anarcho-Christians. And, I think I sure hope you're right. I hope the degeneracy of Childerberg, if you will, isn't off-putting to people that are going.
It's not very degenerate.
It's not degenerate. I use that word maybe in a more colloquial sense. Like, I've joked before, all my friends are degenerates, and I love it. But when I say that, I mean nonconformists. I mean authentically human people. They're not degenerates. They're not degenerating anything. They're authentically human and imperfect and raw and red-pilled, and that's what it is. And if you're not used to that kind of raw authenticity, it can look degenerate because people for the first time ever are able to be open and honest and free and a little bit wild. It's like we were talking, that measured wilding out versus the destructive wilding out.
Yeah.
Jesus drank the wine. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So that's the thing is that I think that a lot of people think that Ancapistan is that.
Like degeneracy?
No. That event, whenever really what would happen under Ancapistan is it would end within moments. It would end in moments because you take away restraints from the most evil corporations in the world. I think they've already proven that they don't mind using you as a human experiment. And they'll turn. The reason they haven't turned the 5G on yet, and whether you think that it's going to hurt us or not, they haven't turned it on yet, is because they have rules to follow at this point. Now, if they didn't have those rules and they turn it on, I mean, we don't know if the waves cause cancer. We don't know if they do nothing, if they're completely freaking harmless, we don't know yet. And that's why it hasn't turned on yet.
the fact that my phone says I have 5G signal, that doesn't mean shit right now. Is that what you're telling me?
No, they haven't officially turned it on yet. Apparently it interferes with airplanes. So
Mm-hmm.
and there's been a lot of legal stuff holding it up. But like without putting brakes on these corporations, we're gonna get owned by corporations. That's all there is to it. I mean, I'm all for individuals, and I'm for individuals that are not for me to be the fuck away from me. And and that's another thing is that Ancapistan, the whole idea of no borders. Well, the thing is, like, you'll just get flooded in with people that have no respect and no nothing to do with this culture. They would destroy the culture, the American culture that this whole belief is supposed to come from, the idea of the founders, etc. They don't have that in the third world. They don't, and that's one of the reasons they're letting all the third worlders in right now, is because they can control them whenever times get to a certain point. They can be like, hey, well, they see everybody here as being unfathomably rich, and to them we are. And now, you bring a whole bunch of them in, you turn off the tethers, the things that keep them orderly. I mean, you hear stories about third worlders just randomly murdering people all the time. And yeah, it's not a good thing. So, the idea, like, borders are a good thing. And not just private property borders, I mean state borders. So, call me a statist if you want. I don't care. I like that my truck has doors. Whenever I close the doors at night, I don't want, whoever to just wander right in here.
Well, I think this is where, like, the theoretical and the practical collide. It's very nice. Again, if the backdrop, if the canvas that's being painted on is anarchy, well, yeah, there's no, it's not paint by numbers, right? There's no clearly defined borders in the canvas of the world. But if you try to paint a beautiful picture, there will be clearly defined differentiation between elements of the painting. I'm getting a little ethereal with my metaphor here, but, like, what good is a painting if there's no definition to it, right? If there's no border, if there's no contrast between, objects, between subject, whatever. It's like, if we want to argue theoretically that, like, borders should not exist, then, where does the edge of your body, where does the border of your existence end? Like, without borders, there is no definition to anything. So, I agree. I think there's a fault that we can fall into, like, again, this idol worship of an idea, which is maybe based in some level of truth, but is not complete. And going back to Buck Johnson and some of his more recent guests, he asks them often, like, a question about, like, what was your progression to where you are now? And they often came by way of libertarianism, anarchism, what have you. And what I find interesting is they have a hard time defining themselves at this point in time. And I can relate.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe his just most recent guest who maybe I think he had to press the question a little bit. And finally the guy goes, well, if you had a gun to my head and said, one word, what are you politically? He said, my answer would be Christian. And he left it at that.
That's the best answer right there. And I think that's one of the solutions to the mess that we're in, is that, I don't think that voting solves anything, because they can just install whoever they want, however they want to do it. And in fact, man, on Sunday we should dive into a little bit of the Fox News versus Dominion case, because I think that that's interesting. I've heard some really interesting takes on that. But anyway, the thing is, we only need, so as Christians, we need to be represented by Christians and make that accountable. It's, it's insane how much of Biden's cabinet is all Jewish or secular or whatever else. We need to be a country run by Christians. We don't need Mayorkas, Yellen, Blinken, all these people that are a different faith than us. This is the same faith that killed our Savior.
Biden claims to be a Christian, though. I mean, that's the thing. We have to be discerning and judge. If I can be so bold, we have to try our best to judge the authentic Christians from the false, right? Even though, whatever, judge not lest ye be judged. We have to use our best judgment, our discernment, our common sense to say, just because somebody claims to be one of us doesn't mean they are, right? Like JFK Jr. to me seems way more Christian than Biden. But even then you might say, well, maybe not. I don't know. You seem to know more about that guy than I do, but it's like, is there a good, honest Christian?
Yeah. Are you talking about RFK?
RFK. Yeah. What did I say? JFK Jr. I meant RFK Jr. Yeah.
JFK Jr. also has died, but so there's
right.
And
he died in a plane crash, right?
Yeah. Yep. And that's one of the QAnon crazy stories is that, that he's coming back and he's been running things in secret and he's cute. But
and he's cute. Is that
yeah,
that'd be a trip. What if dude, I don't know.
A lot of this, I get along with those guys really well, and I wish I wish that their optimism, because like I was talking to a dude the other day, he was awesome, and he was into all this stuff, but man, I don't think that there's a good guy. He believes that there's a war between two deep states, and to me, I just think there is the deep state, and there's different factions of it, and they do go to war with each other, but they all don't care about you, and they all hate you, and are just looking to turn a buck.
What is Q except one more false idol, right? So
right.
Maybe one of the falsest idols, in fact, because it could have been 10 different people it could have been 100 different people. We don't know, but it was an idol that people sort of knelt to, just like Trump, just like any other major politician, again, like, I think there's a reason, Jesus is referred to as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, right? Like, I believe this was on Buck's more recent show, but they're talking about how either that or it was you and your Aunt Laura. I can't remember which, but it was like talking about how perhaps monarchy makes the most like political sense. And the only perfect monarchy would be like a monarchy in which like Jesus was the monarch. But that,
I'm about 3 episodes behind on Buck, but I think that was on his show. We didn't, Laura and I haven't talked about monarchy yet, but
I'm doing a poor job of expressing the thought, but he was expressing how a lot of anarchists end up concluding that monarchy might be the best form of government. But it's like, I forget exactly how it was stated, but sort of like, well, if we had a monarchy in which the quote unquote monarch was sort of the idea of Jesus, right? Which is absurd, but like if we all followed the teachings of Jesus as if they came down from a living monarch, that would be the best form of society. But, the beauty of God is that he gives us free will. Jesus was a leader, not a tyrant. So we will never have the benefit of living under Jesus's rule, so to speak, even though we might be better for it. Like, am I making sense?
Yeah.
Like,
So one of my favorite people in the Old Testament is Gideon, and Gideon won this big battle, or actually Gideon purged a bunch of Baal worshippers, right? Got rid of them, and they all were like, okay, well, we want to make you king, and he said, and this is before Jesus, but he said, God is the only king. And I love that sentiment from that character. I think that he's amazing. And then Samuel, whenever he was asked for a king and eventually relented and gave the people a king because they wanted one, he gave them the warning that the king is going to abuse the hell out of you. And he listed off all the things that the king will do to the people, and sure enough, that's one of the things that kings do. They abuse the hell out of people.
I'll tell you what, man, I'm losing focus because I got to pee like a racehorse. Can you give me like a minute?
You know what? I think we covered the topics.
Fair enough.
Do you want to just wrap it up? Or do you have more that you wanted to say?
Well, just give me like 30 seconds, dude. I got to pee so bad, and then we can sign out. All right.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. But Gideon was one of my more interesting characters to me just because of that. And then that whole situation there of all of the people that seem to go back to worshiping Baal. And it's weird because you find a lot of the people, and Laura and I have covered this before, along with Maria, that a lot of the people that are doing the crazy stuff right now are all followers of Baal, or they do Baalic worship things. And the progression of what was Babylon, and that's one of the titles of the show. I had Diesel on recently, and Diesel has a song called Burn Babylon Burn, and it was a response to Build Back Better. And now a lot of people see America as Babylon, and there's a lot of parallels here as far as those two empires. And the thing is, when it's going to become horrible, tyrannical, and just so poisonous that that everyone will rejoice as Babylon burns. And we rejoice every week whenever I'm telling you the terrible news, because it's never good news. I mean, sometimes there's good news, but we're seeing the system fall apart, and it's a good thing, but what replaces it is even worse. So, be vigilant, keep your eyes open for that kind of thing.
So I'm grateful. For whatever reason, I decided instead of wearing my headphones to figure out how to make my wireless work, which I'm glad, because while I peed, I was able to listen to you talk. It was great. It was great. But it made me think, in terms of like my journey, my faith journey, if you will. I feel like one of the things that was never made clear to me that I'm incredibly grateful to sort of understand now in a different light, really thanks to your Aunt Laura. I had never been taught that, in essence, maybe I had, and maybe it hadn't sunken in, but in essence, Satan has dominion of the earth. And God, while maybe we would prefer that we live under the perfect monarchy of God, Jesus, whatever, the Father.
Well, that's not what this life is about. Our next life is about living under God's monarchy, under
living in the kingdom of God. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's even if you're not a believer, even if you don't have faith, simply this way of conceptualizing, right? That we were given free will so that we might choose the better path. But in a way, like the cards are sort of stacked against us, like we're fighting an uphill battle. Like, to me, that just feels true. Like, just with what we've gone through. And I think it sort of jives with like anarchism as an idea, in that like no king, there's no true sovereign aside from, I guess, the individual, and whatever God you ascribe to. And it's like, it's either that or we have to admit that we're totally powerless. So either we choose to like be emboldened and sort of take up the cross, as they say, like take up the mantle of responsibility to be good, to serve good, or we fall prey to the wicked. And I used to really resent the idea that like the world was wicked, because I see the beauty of nature. I love nature. I love the world. But like that's the whole point, isn't it?
So here's the fun part about that is that man was meant to have dominion over the world. We screwed up. And so now that Satan has dominion over the world, it doesn't change the nature of the world. God gave us a perfect world. You put things into this world, and your efforts you're rewarded for. So you put seeds in the ground and you get fruit eventually. You put you put two animals together, and you got baby animals. And we have been fooled by all of these. The whole thing that's been preached to us our whole lives is that there's some kind of scarcity, and then we're always scared of our money scarcity. We're scared of fuel scarcity. They're trying to design food scarcity into this situation in a system that is like, we have food everywhere. This is a very abundant nation. And then like, people are getting abortions because they don't think that there's going to be enough for their children. They think that they're not going to have enough money to raise the child. They think a lot of these things, and scarcity is one of the things that motivates a lot of those people.
So you sacrifice your baby to the spirit of fear, instead of faith, having faith that God will provide. Yeah, it's a very basic, like basal sort of decision, right? It's opting out of it's you're not opting out of fear. You're simply, what's the word I'm looking for? You're coping with fear by cutting the possibility out of your existence altogether. It's a terribly, I mean, that's the thing.
And it's an attempt to absolve themselves of responsibility, because if you properly have a child, you're responsible for it. And so they opt out of the responsibility, and a lot of times they do it because they don't think they have enough money. Or
I think it's interesting, and it's very like, it makes sense that abortion is one of these core questions. It makes perfect sense.
Recently, I talked about it last week. So there was a guy who committed suicide over the AI convincing him that it's going to help climate change. Well, somebody else just today or yesterday has done the same thing, maybe not motivated by AI, but people are topping themselves because they're afraid that the climate is going to get too hot. It's not going to happen. We're not destroying the earth. I promise you. Just enjoy things. It is actually a beautiful world, and I love the world, and I'm very grateful to God for this world. But I understand the powers and principalities that are a hold of everything, and why we're swimming in such corruption, and why things work the way they do, and why people that are bad are rewarded. I see that all the time, and that used to be the most confusing thing to me. Is why would I follow God whenever bad people are rewarded in this world? Well, the reason bad people are rewarded in this world is because they make trades and offers with those powers and principalities. It's why,
Mm.
Laura made it the point on one of our episodes that she was really sad when she saw Ryan Reynolds in every single movie for, 3 or 4 summers in a row, because he must have made a dark bargain, or likely made one. I don't know if he did or not. No, neither of us know, but people that blow up like that, 20 years ago, the rise of Vin Diesel, I mean, he was in every single movie for a little bit right there, and it just seems like these people make dark deals, probably, possibly. None of us have 100% on that, but you do
Well,
have ideas like Megan Fox. She drank
yeah.
blood, and talks about it. Some of them are open about it.
Well, I was going to say, I want to say, I think Robert Johnson, the folklore around Robert Johnson selling his soul at the crossroads. It's a compelling story, partly because I don't believe he ever denied it. It's like people pointed out the fact that this guy was not very good. And then a couple months later, he comes back to town and he can just play like a bat out of hell. And the devil went down to Georgia, like that song. There's a reason. There's only so many songs that never get old. And in my opinion, The Devil Went Down to Georgia is one of those songs. It never gets old because the story is so compelling of a guy making not a deal with the devil, but a wager. Something about that is even more interesting. He says, if you win, you get my soul. If I win, I get that fiddle made of gold. And I don't know, is that a false wager? Does the devil win in any event?
I think that by risking it, he
made the deal.
People don't understand the value of their soul. That's another thing about society that just demoralizes you. And one thing that Buck Johnson always talks about, since we're talking about him, is Father Seraphim Rose has that book on nihilism. So he always brings up nihilism and how nihilism has crept into everything. And in fact, Ron Paul's next conference, is the theme of it is nihilism. And in this society where we have been browbeat, and the thing is, we can't let nihilism win. That is not the way to be. And yeah, it's how they do it. It's how we end up here, the demoralization, and that that big gaping hole in everybody that needs to be filled with the love of Christ. And all you have to do is accept it.
Well, Andy, I'll just say, like, I appreciate what you're doing, man. I've really, I think your last handful of episodes have been pretty spot on. I want to hear more from Aunt Laura. I'm excited. I ordered her book. I'm very excited to read it. I suppose we should plug that for her sake, right? Well, it's called something about. Tell me what it's called.
The Roots of Iniquity, and I misspelled it. But iniquity is INIQUITY. For some reason, I thought it was spelled like inequity, but I've heard it pronounced that way several times, so I thought it was the same thing. But yeah, I just ordered 5 copies. I'm gonna have my own copy in the truck, and I'm gonna hold a copy for whenever I see friends, and whenever I go back home, I'll always have 2 copies on me. I also made sure that I ordered Hey Duke 2029. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. It's funny. It was very much written. So it's my novel. I wrote it last summer, and I was thinking about it kind of in the context of how I'm feeling about things now. And I think it's very much a tale of a seeker, of a lost soul trying to find the way. And there's some religious undercurrents and whatnot. Overall, though, it's just a fun, like, adventure story about, you know, two friends that kind of meet unexpectedly in a post blackout world and are trying to, you know, combat the forces of evil. But yeah, Hayduke 2029. It was a fun thing. I just wrote it because I felt like I had to get ideas out, and I'm not going to claim that it's going to solve any. It's no complete formula for success or happiness, but it's a fun read, and that's all. Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's a huge accomplishment, and I'm proud of you, man. I'm glad that
Appreciate it, man. I'm
got something
hoping to
out
write
there.
another one. I'm thinking
And
maybe
I'm
this
looking
summer I'll write another.
forward to it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking this Sunday, man, maybe we do another segment of Based or Bogus. I'm thinking about Mel Gibson.
Oh, base as fuck, man. That's like
I knew.
King Base, dude.
I knew you'd say that. I knew it.
Dude. He is
Hell
the
yeah,
most
man.
base Chad of all base Chads.
Dude, just look at the beard, man. It's all the truth. All the truth is held inside the beard, man.
Oh man, and those original Mad Max movies were so much fun. That was
No
when a
doubt.
movie was a movie.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah. Next, we'll have to. I mean, that one's already been concluded. So we'll find somebody else.
It'd be worth talking about. Anyways. Maybe we find somebody to compare him against. How about Mel Gibson versus Megan Fox?
Oh, come on. No contest there.
No contest. Well, I'm just saying, man, in any event, you're doing good work, and I appreciate it fully.
Dude, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate being a part of the What the Fuck forum, and I have so much fun with you guys, and I'm glad that I can add my experiences to that. And thanks
gotta fight those powers and principalities, right?
I mean, that's really what we're doing out here, man. And you know, I'm not the best at it, and you know, and if I was, I think that they would come for me more, because that's kind of how it works from what I understand. So, but you know, one of these days they'll be coming for me. But I know how.
We should
I know
enjoy
how to
being
beat 'em.
under the radar is a good place to be for now. Yeah.
And the way to beat them is for you not to beat them, is for you to ask Christ for you, and that there is no man that can stop these things. These things are beyond humans. You have to consult in Christ in order to do that.
And honestly, that's a weight off of my shoulders, man. You can't carry the weight of the world on your own shoulders. You gotta share the load.
Yep.
Amen.
Yep. And that is a lesson for everyone. You're carrying anything, you know, life's hard. Like I said about all that nihilism, life is hard. So yeah. I want to do another quick shout out, and before you throw the rest of your plugs, but I want to say thanks to Bonita, who was listening on the stream. She was also here for the episode last week with Aunt Laura, and Recycle Bin Laden. Thanks for tuning in again, buddy. I appreciate y'all. Thanks for you know, showing me that there's some people out there that are getting into this. So I appreciate y'all. So Easy Peasy is
Easy Peasy Garden Solutions. That's easypeasygardens.com. If you're in the Indianapolis area and you need a backyard veggie garden, I'm your motherfucker. If you just want to listen to a fun show where we talk about different topics, all sorts of different topics, that's the Easy Peasy podcast. You can find the WTF forum there. If you're looking to buy Hayduke 2029, Amazon is a motherfucker. So if you search for it on there, it won't turn up. But you can go to easypeasy.ittybitty.tips and you can find a link there.
all right. Well, Mike, as always, a good time, man. We should do more collabs.
Absolutely, man. Always a good time.
Yeah. Before Childerberg, I want to get a whole group of us, just big old round table, just to talk nonsense.
Hell yeah, I'm there.
All right, awesome. And then the WTF at Childerberg will be off the hook from us.
Fucking A, bro. Fucking A.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Peace out, y'all. Deuces.